Okay, due to popular demand, I'm finally getting around to making another video. This time I am going to show a couple of techniques I used to create this image in Photoshop. Two techniques in particular I'm going to highlight are frequency separation and HDR toning, both of which are pretty unusual when applied to wildlife photography. This is the finished image, and this is the image as it came over from Lightroom. All right, so the first thing I want to do is create 3 copies of the background layer. I'm going to do that by holding Command J 3 times, and I get 3 copies. I'm going to make the first copy visible by holding Alt and clicking on the eye icon, and then I'm going to apply a blur. Now I have a shortcut for this. Oh, gotta make sure that's the active layer. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And we're going to apply a blur to where most of the fine details are gone, especially the annoying details that were there before. So I'm going to say OK. And what I'm talking about is these kind of details here that I don't want in my color layer. So I now have a color layer. I'm going to make the top layer visible, and I'm going to select it, and I'm going to go to Image, Apply Image. Now select our blur layer, which is layer 1. It's already selected. Make sure we're in subtract mode. These numbers Photoshop chooses for me, and I don't really know what they do, but I know those 2 and 128 are suitable for a TIFF from Lightroom in 16-bit. So I'll say OK. And you can see it's made a high pass filter type of adjustment. I'm going to go down and change the mode to linear light, and that has now restored my image. If I turn those 2 layers on and off, there's no change. What I actually have is detail on this layer, and large detail and color on layer 1. Okay, now that's fine and dandy, but I want to do a little, I don't just want to restore the image to what it was. I want it to be a little more creative, I guess. All right, so I'm going to apply a layer mask. I'm going to hold Option and click on the layer mask icon, hide that. Make this next layer active and visible. I'm going to change the mode to linear light. And then I'm going to go Filter, Other, High Pass. And now I can use a what you see is what you get type of adjustment. Create my own frequency separation layer for detail. I'm going to go pretty aggressive with this because you can see it does a lot with the shadows and large detail compared to what I had before with the apply image. So somewhere around there looks pretty good for what I want. So now what I have is color on layer 1. I have coarse detail on the first copy. I have fine detail on the top copy. I'm going to go ahead and turn this down because it's obviously excessive. Bring it down maybe around 50% or so. On this layer, instead of turning the layer down to 50% opacity, I'm going to put the layer mask down, say around 50% opacity. And in here with a brush selected and white for my color, I have a soft brush at 30% flow. I can come in and paint back the rest of the detail. I'm going to turn off the coarse detail. You can see what I'm doing. I'm just bringing in all the finer details in the areas I want them. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Most of you have already seen the finished image. I can come in here and bring in the fine details, areas where I want them. Be a little quicker. Bring in some. Alright, and turn my large details back on. Again, that's still a bit heavy. Turn that down. Alright. Now since this layer has my coarse details on it, I can use a healing brush J and remove some of these coarse details. I'm not going to spend time doing all of them. And of course, there's a chance there's some of that in the finer details if I painted them in. So I might have to remove those or paint those back out. I'm not going to do all of them. There's a lot throughout the image, but that's the basic idea. So that's the frequency separation. I have color, I have coarse detail, I have fine detail. Now I'm going to do the HDR toning. Now I do have under image adjustments HDR toning, but I don't want to use that because it's going to ask me if I want to flatten my document, which means I'll lose all my adjustment layers. So instead, what I'm going to do is duplicate my color layer with Command J again. Then I'm going to go up to image adjustments, shadows, and highlights. And it's important I do it on a duplicate copy because this is destructive. And this brings me a tone mapping, shadows and highlights dialog. And I can adjust how much I want to recover the shadows, which tones I want to recover, how smooth I want them to be. I have the same for highlights. I have midtone, so I can shift where I want my midtones in this image to be. And I can adjust my clipping if I want. Make that a 1. So I can clip at the black or white so it doesn't go off at either end. So whatever, looks good for what we want to accomplish. And then again, we can bring this down in opacity if we want. In the end, I have 2 layers for color. One is HDR toned, one is just the base blur layer, and then I have 2 layers for detail. Alright, so until next time, see you then.